Emiliya Zhivotovskaya is the founder of the Flourishing Center in New York City. She is the creator of the acclaimed Certification in Applied Positive Psychology, a.k.a. the C.A.P.P program, that has trained over 1,400 practitioners across 38 countries. She is a master certified coach from the International Coaching Federation and calls herself a praca-demic-preneur. You'll find out why on today's episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. All right, so I am joined today with Emiliya. Emiliya, it's so nice to see you.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my privilege, my pleasure to have you here. Just so everyone knows who doesn't know, you're an amazing, amazing woman who runs the Flourishing Center in New York City, and you train coaches and you train people in a certificate program for positive psychology. I mean, you do lots of stuff. And so it's really thrilling for me to have you here, because if anybody knows like essential coaching skills, it's you. And so I just want to, mine, that's redundant, but I want to get
mind me. Yeah.
get it. So tell us about this. What does this mean? Did you create the terms positive psychology programs? Did you create that?
Oh, no, far, far from it. It's actually its own psychological field that started in 1998. Dr. Martin Seligman, who is a famous cognitive psychologist known for his theories on learned helplessness and learned optimism.
Sure.
He started the field in 1998 when he was president of the American Psychological Association, and basically pulled a call to action for psychologists all over the world. And he said that psychology has done a really good job at identifying and treating dis-ease and dysfunction. And it was just previously kind of assumed that if you had a person who was anxious or depressed or struggling and they were in the quote unquote negative in their life, if you treated them, if you got them back to baseline, your work as a psychologist would be done. The person would then be functioning and normal and happy and back to being their best possible self. And what we now know is that mental health and mental illness are not opposites of each other. So just because you're not struggling with a mental illness doesn't necessarily mean that you have the skills and capacity for mental health. And so he invited psychologists to say, what if we started to treat these two things as not opposites, and actually ask the question from a scientific perspective, what does it take for people to go north of neutral into the positive? So rather than just getting people out of the negative to zero, how do we get them into +1, +2, +10 into the positive? So he said, we need to study things like positive emotions. We spend time studying negative emotions. Why not study positive emotions? What good are they? What impact do they make? Let's study gratitude. Let's study hope. Let's study purpose and meaning. Let's study character strengths and prayer and engagement and all of these things that we suspect leads to a more meaningful life. But from a scientific perspective, we didn't have a lot of evidence about it, didn't have a lot of understanding about it. And so that field was started, and I came to be involved in that field in 2006. I did a master's degree in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. I was part of their second graduating class at the time, and got to be one of the first 100 people in the world to graduate with a degree in positive psychology. Got to work for the University of Pennsylvania as one of their resilience trainers, and started to focus primarily on, I knew coming into this field I wanted to be a life coach. And I went right into my master's degree from my undergrad. And so while I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker, I wanted to help people live healthier, happier, more fulfilled lives, I thought, who's going to take a 21-year-old life coach seriously? I must need some science underneath my belt to help people really, take me seriously or what I have to say. Even though at the time I to be honest, I was helping people. I kind of knew that I had a natural way of supporting people and was already doing it. I really wanted to understand more. So I call myself a praca-demic-preneur because I'm a practitioner first and foremost. I'm an academic at heart in that I want to understand the research, understand the science, understand the theory, figure out how to apply the theory. And then I'm an entrepreneur. So I started the Flourishing Center in 2008, giving courses, workshops, offerings in positive psychology, and my other academic interest, which is mind-body medicine, which is what my PhD work is in. And in 2012, I started with a colleague the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program, giving people an opportunity to actually learn positive psychology in a systematic way. Before our trainings, the only options for people, if you wanted to learn positive psychology back then, was either go out and get a master's degree or read a whole bunch of journal articles and occasional books that were coming out on the topic. Now there's a ton out there. You could watch YouTube videos, there's books, there's other programs out there, but we were the first to bring this to the market along with another certification, a.k.a. that was started by Tal Ben-Shahar, that said to people, a lot of the people that I've trained already had degrees in psychology. Some of them were clinical psychologists, some of them were educators, yoga instructors, chiropractors, head of human resource development, head principals of schools, people that were passionate about basically saying, we want to understand the science. We want to understand what is resilience. We want to understand what are character strengths. How do we work with these things? So I started to train positive psychology practitioners in helping them get the science of what some people were already doing intuitively, but get the science under their belt, help them understand how the brain works, how the body works, how behavior works, so that they can help others. And then a couple of years after that, after going through a whole bunch of coaching certification programs that I had been doing, and I had earned my MCC with the International Coaching Federation, which is a master certified coach credential. At the time, there were only about 750 people in the world that were holding an MCC credential. I think now we might have broken the 1,000-person mark, but as a master certified coach, I built out our coaching training program here and have now also trained hundreds of coaches and run an A.C.T.P. ICF accredited program, which is an accredited coach training program, which is the highest level that the International Coaching Federation offers. So I'm very passionate about the craft of coaching. I think it's an art, it's a skill, it's a craft that I love to empower change agents with, because when I get a lot of people come to me and say, Emiliya, like, I'm interested in positive psychology, but what does a person do with a degree in positive psychology or with a certification in positive psychology? And I always say to them, both nothing and everything, because it's just a field of science. And so you kind of have to create your own career from your interest in the research. But the natural applications, the best applications of positive psychology is coaching, consulting, or teaching. And so in my company, the Flourishing Center, we offer training programs in all three. So we've got a coaching certification program. We have programs for people who are interested in teaching positive psychology. We have a small group facilitation program. We've got a resilience trainer program. And this upcoming March, we're rolling out our first positive psychology consulting certification program as well. So we really try to just be a place that people who are passionate as change agents, that they want to make a positive change in the world, could go to learn the science, the skill, and the application, and also some of the business development support as well. Because when I say I'm a passionate praca-demic-preneur, I'm not just passionate about my own business as an entrepreneur, I'm really passionate about how people who want to make a positive change in the world turn their passion into a career, into a sustainable career for themselves.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, that's brilliant. That is just the most concise and in-depth opening remarks I've ever had on the podcast show. That's just like answers every question I've had and puts it all into a remarkably pretty bundle. So well tied, beautiful bundle. What do you could perceive then as the difference? Let me just back up a minute. The question that I've often asked people, and I have come up with some answers of my own, but I want to hear it from you. in the past, when I started out doing NLP back in the 1980s, NLP was itself a study of this structure of subjective experience, but primarily it was done as a therapy. You do change processes with people. You do a NLP therapy with people. It actually used those kind of terms. Primarily, I think, because Bandler and Grinder were modeling therapists. They were modeling Fritz Perls. They were modeling Virginia Satir. Fritz Perls was a Gestalt therapist. Virginia Satir was a family therapist. Then they modeled Milton Erickson, who was a hypnotherapist and psychiatrist. So a lot of the NLP processes came out of the therapy world. So it was natural, really, that it was going to be a kind of a therapeutic application of these change works that they were modeling. Along the way, sometimes, I don't know who started it all, who started using the term specifically, but along the way, it became almost like therapy was a bad word. So people just said, we're just going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to call it coaching. So I'm doing a coaching process, and people have these coaching certifications that are basically kind of NLP therapy situations, but they call it coaching. So for you, coming from this background of positive psychology, and by the way, I read both of Mark Seligman's books that you've mentioned, the Learned Helplessness and Learned Optimism, fantastic stuff, really fantastic. But for you, coming from that background, what do you think is the difference between being a psychologist or being a psychotherapist and being a coach?
That's such a great question, and one that I go into a lot of detail, typically in describing, but I'm going to summarize it here. And if people are interested in this, I have an online course on my website. If you go to theflourishingcenter.com under other programs, you'll see that there's a course on demystifying the coaching process, because this happens all the time. People get confused. What's the difference between coaching and therapy? I actually cringe inside when some people think of coaching as just blanketed, more acceptable therapy, which is, and the reason for that is, from my perspective, they are completely different skills. So first and foremost, ideally, what you're looking at is the difference between a clinical practice and a non-clinical population. So therapists are trained in being able to diagnose and work with disease and dysfunction. Coaches should not be working in that realm because that's not what they have been trained in. So when I train positive psychology practitioners, which by definition are people who are learning how to practice the science of human flourishing, which means we spend 9 months studying the conditions that enable people to thrive, which is different than the conditions that we are facing when people are struggling. So I do not train my students in how to look for early warning signs of psychosis or neurosis, or how to work with deep depression or schizophrenia or autism or attention deficit disorders. Those are important experiences that people have. And clinicians are trained as to how do you treat and how do you diagnose and work with that side of the human condition. Positive psychology comes in at the neutral when people are maybe showing signs of languishing, and help them work towards going north of neutral by helping them identify how did they build awareness of themselves, what skills are they missing, helping them move towards high-level wellness and to flourishing. So first and foremost, that's the big difference. And we are basically looking to, by integrating positive psychology into even traditional psychotherapy practices, we're trying to build on the concept of the wellness model rather than the disease model. So the disease model was one where we were trying to fix to get back to neutral. The wellness model, which is the big shift that's happening in our world, says, well, why stop at neutral? So therapists might come to my training and learn positive psychology so that they can work with a clinical population, but not stop at neutral. So once they've helped a person get out of their deep depression, they don't have to stop there. They can also help them figure out what will give their life meaning and purpose, and what are their goals and what do they want to achieve. And the lines are starting to get blurred because now there are actually forms of therapy being created that are pulling from the constructs of coaching, which is its own field that actually started with Thomas Leonard once upon a time. And they're starting to create things like solution-focused therapy, where the therapist is actually asking, well, what do you want? And so in summary, one of the big ways that coaches and therapists are different is because of the populations that they should be working with and that they're qualified to work with. Therapists can learn to work the whole spectrum, but coaches, ideally, with most coaching programs, should not be working with clinical populations, that they should understand their scope of practice. They should know when they are to refer out. I personally am not qualified to work with people who are in a state of dysfunction, although I've worked alongside other therapists. If, let's say, I've worked with a client who had borderline personality disorder, and she worked with her therapist on the things that, in the ways in which that borderline personality disorder manifests, and having social issues and low boundaries, yet she would work with me on her goals to still identify what's going to bring her, what kind of meaningful work could she do in the world, and how to identify what she needs to do to take care of herself, and self-care strategies and goal setting. So one of the other ways that sometimes people differentiate the difference between coaching and therapy is that therapy sometimes has this fixing mentality of fixing what's wrong or understanding what's wrong, as
Yes.
though by understanding what has impacted you in the past and how it's impacting you today will be sufficient to move you forward. Coaching says, rather than asking why, we say what's next. It's not that we don't care about the past. When I'm working with my clients and when I'm training my coaches, there is an appropriate way of understanding the past, but we understand the past so that we can move forward. Whereas some particularly like old school forms of therapy, it was enough if you just have this catharsis of talking about how you feel or what's coming up for you. So by definition, I tell my students that it is not a coaching session if it doesn't have the 4 A's. The 4 A's of a coaching session. You need an agenda for your coaching session, which means you're looking for what does the client want and need that they don't yet have. We have to bridge a gap in coaching between where are they and where do they want to go. If it's just to show up and talk about where are they and how they feel and what's coming up in their life or where they have been, it's not coaching. Not saying that it's necessarily therapy, because some therapists may not want to work that way, but every coaching session needs an agenda. Every coaching session should build awareness for the client. The client should have aha moments. They should be uncovering. They should be learning more about themselves, how they see the world. They should be creating that value for themselves. Every coaching session needs action, meaning if all we do is we have a really great conversation and my client's like, wow, I learned a lot, that was great, but they're not necessarily going to take action. There's not things that they're going to move forward on. It's missing a key component of what a coaching session is all about. So I always look to get action. What are you going to do differently as a result of this conversation? And then the 4th A, which is accountability. What's going to help you do it? So coaching is its own skill set. It's its own art. And it does sometimes get confused with therapy because we're talking and I'm asking you questions and I'm listening deeply as your coach. I'm doing these things that might seem like therapy. However, they are fundamentally different. And that difference shows up when you're actually experiencing coaching. And then there's degrees even within coaching of how to do what I call master level coaching. The International Coaching Federation, which is sort of the accrediting body in the field of coaching, identifies 3 different levels of coaching. They call it the ACC level, the PCC level, and the MCC level. And the ACC is a associated coach, professional coach is the PCC, and then the master level coach. And one of the big differences between a master level coach and a beginner level coach is that master level coaches let the client lead the dance. The master level coach is not giving advice, not telling the client what to do. They're really co-creating and holding the container for the client's wisdom to come out. And then if your client has exhausted their resourcefulness in terms of what they're thinking, you can add in your ideas. You can make suggestions, you can offer books, you can offer skills, but it starts with the client first. And that's such an essential difference, and I think misunderstanding that people get when they go to see a coach. Like sometimes they think that they're going to go see a consultant. A consultant takes in information and gives you advice. It's based on my professional opinion, based on this, data that you've given me. Here's what you should do. So coaching is not about giving advice. It's not consulting. It's different than mentoring. And so when I train my coaches, I help them delineate that all the different approaches between healing, teaching, consulting, mentoring, counseling, being a therapist, they're all different things that we can do. They're different ways that we can serve. But from my perspective, coaching is one of the hardest and most profound approaches for how to help people. It's way easier to teach someone or just tell them what to do. It's easier to kind of counsel them. But when you learn the craft of coaching, it is one of the most rewarding ways to help a person get from where they are to where they want to be. And it's empowering for them. It's life-giving for you as the coach. And it is a field that I'm like exponentially passionate about.
Oh, cool. Again, I say, wow. Again, very, very amazing. Thank you. Remarkable answer. I would just like to say, from my perspective, that a lot of the solution-oriented therapy types of approaches come also from the field of Ericksonian hypnotherapy. That Erickson often said that true healing in the psychotherapy world did not come from looking back in the past. He referred to that as psychological archaeology. He said, it's interesting, it's informative, but it's not what's going to cause you to get to where you want to go. He was always future-oriented and solution-oriented. And I think that's where NLP got that kind of mode as well. Again, something you said resonated very strongly with something else I've said a few times, a few million times in my training world, is that, psychology asks why. Why are you this way? Why did this happen this way? Why did it manifest? And the idea is, if you find that insight, then things will change. But they don't necessarily. They often make a person just very conversational about their problems. They can describe it in great detail. But NLP wants to know, like, how? How are we going to change? How are we going to get from here to where we want to go? How are we going to do that? What is the outcome? What is the target we're shooting for? And how are we going to make that happen? So I think there's a lot of overlap there, which is a beautiful thing for me to be hearing from you. I, by the way, also studied with Thomas Leonard. I met him like 1993 at a conference that I was attending. I thought he was crazy. I thought, with coaching, what's that all about? Nobody would ever do that. What are you, a legal league? It just didn't. But I liked him so much. I said, well, let me sign up for his, coaching 1, 2, 3 program or whatever, and see what it was like. And so I spent a lot of time on the phone with him after that, because that's how he taught. There was before the internet, so it was telephone coaching. It was really amazingly exciting times. And the way your approach to this is so, like I said before, so comprehensive, so complete. It's just really exciting. You must be teaching some great coaches there at the Flourishing Center. And by the way, I love the name. The Flourishing Center is just a fantastic name. I love that.
Thank you.
That's such a descriptive, in a nutshell, that's how you do this. You flourish from your center, and this is the center from which you do it. Tell me more about what you think a person needs to have as an essential skill for them to individually be a great coach.
Such a great question.
Thank you for saying so.
The way that I think about coaching, I actually think of it as 3 balls that you juggle. And so each of those 3 balls represents the most essential skills. So may I do 3 instead of 1? I have a hard time. I'm also someone who has a hard time picking favorites. There, people ask me, like, what's your favorite cuisine? I'm like, I don't have just one. What's your favorite song? I don't have just one. It's my favorite, essential skill. There's 3. And the reason I really love this model of that I've created around these 3 skills is because I feel that these are the 3 things that make for a master coach, and that the difference between a beginner coach that learns these 3 skills and a master level is just being able to do these 3 things exceptionally well. And so you can have someone who's just sort of basically juggling 3 balls, or you can see someone like Chris Bliss, who's this master juggler that can do this remarkable awe-inspiring, breathtaking performance with just 3 balls. He's captivating. And so when I train our students, I use this as a metaphor because it can seem so simple. And if you know how to juggle with 3 balls, you're like, yeah, this is easy. But then you watch someone like Chris in action and you're like, whoa, all the things you could do with the basics. And like most things, most Zen principles are, it's really about the basics and simplifying it. So those 3 things I refer to as the 1, the coach's mindset, 2, active listening, and 3 is powerful solution-focused questioning. So I believe that coaching starts with the skill of holding the coach's mindset. And unlike the therapeutic mindset or the diseased mindset, which is that I am here to fix something that is broken.
Yes.
I am here to heal dysfunction, whether it be because I'm a medical doctor, whether it be because I'm a healer, whether it be because I am a consultant for a company coming in to figure out where are we having revenue issues. There's this model that something is broken and it is my job to fix it. The coach's mindset, I believe the mindset that I believe a coach should hold in order to be the most effective coach, I draw on from Eastern traditions, and within Tantra, Tantra yoga, there is a concept that has always resonated so deeply with me, and the word is called Purna, and Purna means fullness. And the concept of fullness, of completeness, of wholeness is one of the elements in Tantra of the divine. And because it's the element of the divine, it's also what's true of us. And it's this idea that life is whole. The individual is whole. Things are not broken, needing fixing. The same way nature is full and whole, it knows how to create seasons that, with the winter comes the spring, and from spring comes summer, and then leaves start to fall in fall, and we just sort of do the whole thing all over again. There's a natural perfection and wholeness. We apply that same concept of wholeness to life and to ourselves. And for the way that this is translated, the words Purna can translate into, I have within me all that I need, and all that I have I need. If I'm trusting in fullness, I have to say, I'm whole. I'm not broken. Even with these things that I'm missing in life, all these things I'm waiting for, it's so easy to get caught up in, there's something wrong with me, as opposed to like, I'm full, I'm whole. I may have things I want to improve on in my life, but I'm not broken. And I believe that when a coach goes into a coaching session, holding that mindset, they're able to say, my client has within them all that they need, and all that they have they need. And this lens as a coach just transforms how you approach the coaching session. You're not going into the session thinking, my poor client and all the issues they're having, how am I going to help them? How am I going to fix it for them? And it's on you. You're believing that, hey, this isn't a problem that they're facing, it's an opportunity. They somehow need this, it's somehow on their path. We're going to treat it as that. We're not going to treat it as a problem. And then you're also coming at them from the place of wholeness, which the CTI, the Coaching Training Institute, who's responsible for the coactive coaching model, calls clients naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So that's right up there with that model, because when you believe in Purna, it's like my client has the answers within them, or they need something within them in order to move forward, and it's present. And my job as the coach is to help them tap that thing. So if we don't hold the coach's mindset, we hold the fixing mindset. We hold the brokenness mindset. It's our job to fix it. It puts pressure on us as the coach. It puts us into advice giving mode, trying to add value to the client in any way that we can, but it really can take us out of the seat of being a powerful coach. So everything starts with the coach's mindset, from my perspective. It's the most important skill set. If you don't have that, it'll impact your listening. If you don't have that, it'll impact your questioning. So it starts there. And then we train listening. So the second essential skill set is active listening, teaching people how to listen not just to what the client is saying, but listening for the greater meaning and purpose underneath what they're saying, learning to listen with all of ourselves as the coach, listening with intuition, listening with heart, listening for nonverbals, metaphors, deep listening to our clients. And all coaches know that you train your ear You train your ear, you train your body as the vessel through which information is being processed so that you can serve your clients more. And this, one of the things I love about coaching as well is that my capacity to be trained as a coach helps me be a better friend, helps me be a better partner, helps me be a better family member, because who can't benefit from learning to listen better, from learning how to be comfortable with silence, really helping people feel felt. That's one of my little things around listening. It's like, how do you know that you're really listening to a person? The person feels felt. They feel like you get me. You're really listening to me. You're with me, right? And it's such a gift we give people. So that's the second skill set. The third skill set for coaches, the most essential in this little bundle, is then being able to ask powerful solution-focused questions. So like you said, therapists might be asking the question, why? So why do you feel that way? Why do you think that happened? Why? Why can be a why question can be good. However, it's rarely sufficient to truly tap what the person needs in order to move forward. Why questions often can put people on a defensive, and why are you so depressed? Oh, here's why I'm depressed. So why questions are not as powerful as what and how questions. Learning how to ask questions that broaden your client and let them lead the dance, that put it back on them to decide where the coaching session is going. So it really is a dance where your client is leading and you're following them. And a lot of us, when we're not trained in asking questions, will ask, do you, is there, have you type of questions. And those types of questions are usually us coming up with ideas for the client. They're leading questions, as opposed to asking your client what my friend Christopher Carter refers to as a powerful question, which is when you ask your client a what or how question that neither you nor them know the answer to. If you already know what the answer is, then it's a leading question. Then you shouldn't ask it as a question. You should just offer it as a reflection. Or if you're asking them a question that they already know and you're the only one learning as a coach, it's not a powerful question. A powerful question is a drop the mic kind of question. It's, given all of this, what are you going to do differently? It's what needs to change. It's, what does life want of you right now? It's those questions that are like really powerful questions that when we are in a problem ourselves that we're very rarely asking ourselves. And so that's where coaching brilliance comes in, that we as coaches can offer our clients this. So I think those are the three essential skills to how coaches work: the coach's mindset, active listening, powerful solution-focused questions, and then the 4 A's of what makes a coaching session a coaching session. That you need to have an agenda, that you need to have awareness, action, and accountability.
For the third time today, I would just like to say, wow, that's great. No, that's really remarkably concise. So I will just leave it there because I have no follow-up questions to that. That's just great. Except I do have one other question that I traditionally ask everyone who's been on this podcast thus far, at least. And that is, what essential skill do you think is important or essential for a person to be able to make a living as a coach? That, you are an entrepreneur as well as everything else. So again, I think you're the perfect person to be asking this question too. So what is essential for a person to be able to apply their trade to be a successful coach?
Yeah, I think as far as a skill goes, I would say, like, how is a skill different than maybe a mindset? There's, like, we could talk about, like, what's a mindset that an entrepreneur needs to hold in order to be a successful entrepreneur, as opposed to a skill. Because I would say that communication is the essential skill, but below that capacity to have that communication skill, you need to have the mindset of what my dear friend and colleague Jonathan Fields refers to as being able to be both a maker and a helper. He sort of says, there's some people in the world who are makers, and there's some people in the world who are helpers, and the most successful people are makers and helpers, the ones that can make something that helps and serves. So some makers in the world, I remember I was in a relationship with an amazing visual artist and engineer and metal manufacturer. And so, he would manufacture furniture and other things in order to earn his living, but he would just as happily be a maker all day long, and he would make for the sake of making. If somebody could just give him unlimited funds and all he had to do was fiddle around with projects and make art every day, he'd be really fulfilled and really happy. And then others are people who just want to help. They just have this wide open heart. They want to serve, but they're not really so focused on well, how do I make something in the world? And the idea that if making things that help people and serve people, that's what sets you up for an actual career that is satisfying and gratifying, where you're solving problems that people need fixing. Because if you think about it, everything in life is a problem solution model. So you go to your dentist because you have a dental problem. You go to a lawyer because you have a legal problem. You go to a mechanic because you've got a car problem. The most essential thing for coaches to be able to communicate is, what are the problems that I uniquely solve for people? Mm-hmm. And so the capacity to communicate that is a skill. And it takes time. Sure, you can take a coaching certification program where we can say, here's how you describe the types of things that coaches do. But over time, your capacity to communicate that translates into, can you communicate that in a coaching consultation when you're on the phone with a new client that's interested in coaching? Can you communicate that in the copy on your website? Can you communicate that through the classes that you teach? By the way, I offer coaching. So the skill is communication, but the underlying mindset is to hold this idea that I'm both a helper and a maker, and that there's nothing wrong with selling, that selling is an art. That's just a conversation between, here are the types of solutions that I offer in the world, and do my solutions match up to the problem that you're having? So making it a very simple mindset of making and helping. Can I identify how I'm here to help, and what can I make to reflect that offers that in the world? So I think we need both a mindset. I think with all things, we always need to juggle a mindset and a skill set. So even my example of the 3 balls, we hold a coaching mindset, and that supports the skill set of asking questions and listening in a very specific way.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. The idea of a person juggling balls, it reminds me a little bit about being a coach, because there are so many different things one needs to do in order to be successful. You need to be able to listen actively, everything that you've mentioned, obviously, but I've seen a lot of people who go into the field of coaching or, NLP therapy, whatever you might want to call it, who expect that once they get the certification, once they get the little signed piece of paper, that the world will beat a path to their door, and, they can quit their job as a legal secretary or whatever, and just say, I am an NLP practitioner now. And it just doesn't work that way. And throughout one's career, one needs to be continually, reinventing and rebranding, remarketing. COVID-19 has shown us how we have to, change things around in order to stay adapting to the way the world is now. But there's a lot of skills that go into this whole world of being an entrepreneur, of bringing yourself up. I remember a book, frankly, not the greatest book in the world, but the essential idea within it is brilliant, called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, where he says, a person who starts a business is not necessarily an entrepreneur. They can quickly become an overworked technician, because they want to be that builder. They want to be the person who's, doing the mechanics on the automobiles, but they now suddenly have to do the bookkeeping, the advertising, have to do all these things. They become an overworked technician. So to be an entrepreneur really is a juggling act that requires us to have several different hats and to be good at them. And also to, as you said before, with when it comes to therapy versus coaching, when to refer out. Some things in the entrepreneurial world, as an example, you refer out. And an entrepreneur, according to Michael Gerber's definition, is somebody who creates systems and hires people to do that particular job, to do the bookkeeping or to do the marketing or do the cleaning up. And then the entrepreneur creates the systems where that runs and can be replicated, for instance, in 12 locations throughout the U.S. and Canada, as an example, which I think you, at one point, the Flourishing Center had that prior to COVID. You were in 12 cities. So awesome. Awesome stuff. Is there anything else you want to say in closing? I know people can find you online at theflourishingcenter.com. Is there anything else we should know about you, Emiliya, and how people can find? Because, my God, I'm going to re-listen to this podcast and take notes on it. It's just absolutely filled with incredibly valuable information, and I'm deeply grateful, and I'm really excited about learning from it and applying it myself. So is there anything else you want to add to this incredible wealth you've given us already?
Yeah, thank you. The one thing I would say is the Flourishing Center podcast has 5 different types of episodes in there, what I call the practitioner profiles, Science Says, we've got a real-time resilience one, and then one of them is actually called Coach's Corner. And if you're interested in hearing master level coaching be done, what those podcast episodes are just pure coaching sessions. So there are people who volunteer to let me coach them in exchange for recording it and making it available to people, because I think one of the best ways to learn coaching is to hear it. And so if you're interested in hearing coaching sessions and the little archive that I've created of them, feel free to also check out the Flourishing Center under podcast and then type in or click the link for Coach's Corner to get those examples.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. I'm going to be going there soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, gosh, it's so nice to see you, although I'm far away in upstate New York and you are in the city at the Flourishing Center, which I recognize so nicely. I see your little dog in the background too. She's looking well.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com.